Okay, all right. I'm going to go ahead. And Mr. Osteen said he had to step out, but will probably be coming back. And Ms. Walker is not going to be joining us this evening. So I call to order the Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority special meeting. This is Thursday, May 21st, 2020 at 6 p.m. And it's a virtual meeting. We're operating under code 2.2-3708.2A3 that the attorney governor had approved for public boards to meet under during the COVID-19 crisis. This meeting is being held electronically pursuant to Virginia law because the COVID-19 pandemic makes it impractical and unsafe to assemble a quorum physically in a single location. And Leslie, do you want to do the roll call of commissioners, or should I go ahead and do that?
I'll do it. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Chair Redker?
Here.
Vice Chair Oliver?
Here.
Commissioner Goldblatt?
Here.
Commissioner Osteen? Commissioner Slaughter? Commissioner Talbert?
Here.
Mayor Walker? We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. And let's have a moment of silence. I know today there were a couple of very sad news today. A couple of beloved members of the community had passed away early this morning. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. So a moment of silence, please. All right. So in terms of general announcements, Kathleen or Dave might have some others. I just wanted to mention there's been different announcements coming out about more COVID-19 testing becoming more available, and also food distribution at some of our sites. I think that I'll ask Kathleen to chime in, but I think most of that information is being forwarded on to residents or put into newsletters. Kathleen, is that correct?
Yes, I know FAR is going to be handing out flyers tomorrow and on Saturday. That's going to be happening on Saturday. So we're really looking forward to that. There's also some wraparound food services that are going along with it that we're really glad to part with.
Okay, great. You cut out a little bit there.
No, that was pretty much it. I just wanted to, we're going to get a flyer out to share it with the board.
Okay, thank you. In terms of official, public meetings, I know that this week's redevelopment meeting was canceled. So next week redevelopment's meeting is still on at 2:30, and anyone is welcome to join us.
That's Thursday at 2:30.
What did I say? Sorry.
You said next week. So
next week on Thursday. Any other announcements or meeting dates that we need to be advertising? Okay, we'll open it up to public comment. And I hear that we are on channel 10 on TV as we were normally before the COVID-19 pandemic. And we also have an email that will go into Dave Norris if someone wants to email a question or comment in that he can read to the board.
And that address, if anybody wants to submit a public comment during this meeting, do so at CRHA comments, CRHA comments@gmail.com.
Thank you. So open for public comments.
I'll comment. Hey, it's Brandon Collins. I am a staff member of FAR, Public Housing Association of Residents. Working remotely, but you can still call us at 434-984-3255. Leave a message and one of our staff will get back to you. First off, we're all just in huge shock, devastating news of members of the FAR family. So it's hard to give much comment this evening, but I hope we can find a way to celebrate the passing of these two amazing men, longtime community members. I did want to add to your announcement. There is testing this Saturday at Mount Zion African Baptist Church and at the Jefferson School, primarily for residents of South First Street and 6th Street, and any Crescent Halls residents who didn't get tested tested there, as well as, I believe, for Friendship Court and Green on 5th. I don't have the information right there in front of me. I believe if you call FAR, we can give you the information for that, or just send us an email at admin@farcville, PHARCVILLE.org. And then just wanted to say, we gave some comments last week at the special meeting, but just want to highlight, we're really happy with the working relationship we have with the housing right now, particularly address crisis, and really impressed with the housing authorities' ability to be a helpful partner with other housing providers and other agencies to work on providing some supports for the Charlottesville community. We're happy to continue working with y'all. And I think that's all we got for now.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment? And I think I see that Mr. Osteen is back on. It Leslie, just to note in terms of the which commissioners are present.
Betsy, can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. I got a message that I was on hold and wouldn't be able to speak, but I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, good. Okay, if there's no other public comment at this time, we'll move on, and there will be another opportunity for public comments at the end of the agenda, and also by email if you think of something in the meantime. Next, we'll move on to updates from commissioners and discussions about work sessions. First, we'll do approval of the minutes. We have minutes from the April 27th meeting.
I move to approve the minutes from April 27, 2020.
I second.
Great. All those in favor, and we have to do the roll call since we're on Zoom. All those in favor, let's see, Miss Oliver? Where did she go?
I'm here. Aye. Can you hear me?
Yes, I heard. Yep.
Okay.
Miss Goldblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Osteen?
Yes.
Miss Talbert?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay, great. And then we have an update on our executive director search. Ms. Goldblatt or Ms. Oliver, would you like to give us more of a process update? We don't need to know names yet. But in terms of how the process is going.
Sure. So the subcommittee met last week to narrow the pool down, and we've issued requests for interviews. We'll be holding interviews next week. We'll record those so that any member of the board who wishes to see them can see them. They'll all be conducted via Zoom. And then from there, we'll make a recommendation to the board of who our finalists are, and they'll be scheduling some public meetings with residents and city staff. Potential, I mean, I don't know, I guess maybe in person, but if not, it'll all be digital.
How many applicants are being interviewed?
We're interviewing 4 this round.
Thank you.
Betsy, you're muted.
Man, we need like a flashing light or something. I was going to add, Mr. Osteen, we added a closed session at the end. So if the board wants to know more about the candidates chosen, we can disclose that in the closed session. Otherwise, we'll wait for the next round to disclose names.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Then we'll move on. Next, we have discussion and approval of a resolution approving the authority-wide procurement policy. Kathleen, do you want to take this?
We have Dolores Adams, who we have contracted with the Housing Authority. And she has been really wonderful and was recommended to us by HUD, and she's going to be presenting this for us tonight. If you are you there, Dolores?
Yes, I am. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
This is my second Board of Commissioners meeting for the day. So I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible. What I have done is I've revised the procurement policy for the Housing Authority. I use as a basis the procurement policy that we have at the Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authority. It's already been vetted through HUD. We have, our attorney did it several years ago, and I've been updating it over the last couple of years as HUD provides us with additional guidance. It has incorporates the information for the HUD new procurement standards that are at 2 CFR 200. They transitioned a few years ago from 24 CFR Part 85, when they moved from HUD specific procurement to federal grantees procurement. So that is incorporated in this policy. And we also incorporated the changes from the state Virginia Public Procurement Act, because the one thing HUD tells us is we have to follow the most stringent between the HUD policies and the states. And so we want to make sure we're looking at what is most stringent. Although what I have learned over the last 8 years that I've been working in procurement, HUD is the one that gives us the money. We get nothing from the state at our housing authority. So we want, and HUD comes and audit us. So that's what we want to make sure we abide by HUD rules first and foremost. I can share my screen if this worked like I tried. Can everyone see this? So this is the basic procurement policy. I started the revision in April, and we're waiting for the approval date. And so what we did is we included, if you look, we included information from the HUD handbook, as well as the HUD procurement laws and the state procurement policy. So the idea is that we will make sure that CRHA procurement activities are done with a system of quality and integrity, and that we're in compliance with all federal HUD and Virginia regulations. The way it's organized is this is for all goods, service, and construction that the Housing Authority will enter into. And we want to make sure that the staff, and I'm doing a training next week on procurement, and we'll go over the procurement policy as part of that training if it is adopted by the board tonight. And like I said, even consulting, A&E services, social services, or any other type of services. And we do have a couple of things that we sell. Sometimes we have concessions, like if you have any type of vending machines that the Housing Authority contracts for, or laundry room facilities. If you have laundry rooms and you lease out that space to a vendor and they're actually paying us versus we're paying them. I know that doesn't happen very often, but every now and again we get someone that pays us a little something. The policy does not cover loan transaction and documents, any sub-recipient or sub-grantee agreements with their change orders that we may get, real estate purchase and sales transaction. Now, any type of services, real estate services such as surveys, appraisal, environmental assessments, financial analysis, all that stuff, those are considered services. So that is covered. Employment contracts, limited partnership agreements. I know y'all doing some tax credit development there. In our case, award of housing and housing vouchers to nonprofit agencies. Some housing authorities actually do project-based vouchers to other entities other than itself. And that's usually covered in your admin plan, how you're going to award your project-based vouchers and HAP contract. So this document is public, and so it can be added to your website if you like, or people can always come, be told they can come and review it if they want. And the information that we do related to procurement must be made public, because it is forwardable. And I think when I was one of my first procurement training classes, the instructor said, just assume at the time you start putting together your file that you may wind up in a court of law. So your files need to be very detailed, and we want to make sure we follow the regs where procurement is concerned. It does let people know that any type of proprietary information or trade secrets that they identify, we can remove from a procurement document. And that's part of the procurement solicitations. And they have to tell us why. They just can't say my whole document is proprietary. That doesn't fly. So, and we just there are certain HUD forms that are standard for all procurements. So we want to make sure we state that we're going to include all HUD forms in our procurement actions. The second part talks about our authority and who has it. The ED is generally the contracting officer, and they can determine who they're going to give those. They can authorize other people to serve in that role. Usually has to be in writing. And in the next part, we just talk about some definitions, general definitions, because the whole idea is to make this document something that, along with the HUD handbook, staff can go to and take a look at if they need some procurement guidance. So we try to spell out to the greatest extent feasible what governs us and what we need to do where our procurement is concerned. The issue is we don't want to make it so detailed that you have to come back to the board to change everything. So what HUD generally says with a policy is that as long as the change is it a material, then we can make minor tweaks, but we cannot make all material changes have to go back in front of the board. So I don't know, y'all received, did y'all get a chance to review this? Pause. Okay, great. So I just want to pay special attention at one session because in talking with Kathleen, I know there was an issue where we wanted to make sure we fleshed out the area on the independent cost.
I love it how we just see like somebody's sad old closet in the background, you know? Right. I think it's
cost and price analysis. Wanted to make sure we are able to spell that out in more detail so staff will know. And the way I always remember, the independent cost estimate is done before any procurement action, and then a cost or price analysis is done afterwards. So that should help everyone. I always teach it that way so staff will know what needs to be done. In this policy, although our micro purchase threshold is $10,000, which is what the state allows, we put 5,000 in here for independent cost estimate because we didn't want purchases over $5,000. We thought it would be a good idea if you had any purchase over $5,000, that it will be something that we know that staff did some type of cost estimate on. And because of this, although HUD allows 10,000, we set it a little lower just so that we want to make sure we're getting the most competitive pricing when we're doing solicitations. And we have a form that we designed that we're using now for our cost estimates. And they'll be signed off. It tells what types of, it's the independent cost estimate as well as a price and cost analysis form. They have to tell us what they're doing, what the procurement action is, make sure there's the amount of their estimate for the procurement amount, what budget, because we want to make sure that there's money for whatever it is we're trying to buy, who does it, and then we want to see they can either print it out down here or attach their estimate. And now the department director sign off saying that they've seen this. And all this documentation will go into the procurement file. And anything exceeding our small purchase threshold will be signed by the director of finance or the executive director. We just want to make sure someone is monitoring and making sure that the process is being followed. So I'm not going to go over all this since y'all had a chance to review it. I do want to highlight that contract approval thresholds, anything that's above the small purchase threshold, which is $100,000, needs to be come back before the Board of Commissioners for approval. If you have a change order that's going to increase the contract by greater than 25% or $50,000, that needs to come into the board, come back to the Board of Commissioners for approval. And then if you have a change order that's going to make the contract over $100,000, that needs to come back because anything 100,000 and over is over the small purchase threshold, and the Board of Commissioners have to approve that. And that is, and although HUD has a higher small purchase threshold, the state is still at $100,000, so we have to stay at $100,000 because the state is more stringent with that lower amount. We go in, we talk about the different type of procurement methods, and like I said, we will go into this in much more detail during the procurement training, but our any procurement action over this, the micro purchase threshold, which is the $10,000, we got to have something written. And if I could be an email talking about which procurement method we used and why. And I wanted to stress that we make sure staff knows anything that's covered by Davis-Bacon Act, which is a HUD requirement for construction-related things, which their threshold is a little less. That threshold is at anything over $2,000 versus the $10,000. We want to make sure we have just some further documentation, because a whole set of rules come into effect once we have a project that's Davis-Bacon related. But this just tells us our thresholds in case anyone, I highlighted this because it's very important, because staff, what I've learned is staff has, they may get confused at what things they can, that needs to be shopped and what things that they can buy with just a couple of pricing. Our small purchase threshold, like I said, is $100,000. And blanket purchase orders, blanket purchase orders are very helpful for staff at a housing authority, because we can solicit things like office supplies or pest control services, goods and services, and staff can just go in and purchase off of that up to our threshold. So it's a not to exceed contract. And then we talk about professional services. And a lot of this language comes straight from either the HUD handbook or the state, the Virginia Public Procurement Act. And then we go into the different types of procurement transactions. And it tells you how to use, what you should use when. And I think this is going to be really helpful moving forward. This is pretty detailed. You know, starting off, when you're doing construction, you need to do a sealed bid and other items. And so hopefully what you will find is, I hope is very detailed. I found, and our staff has found that it's been very helpful whenever there are some questions that we're not sure of. We always, there's a lot of reference to the HUD handbook and the Virginia code, so that you can go back and look up the code sections in the handbook. I think that is that's gonna make everyone feel comfortable that what they're doing is in accordance to the rules and regulations. If you can just go back and look at the actual reg itself. But there's a whole process on what to do with the bid. Very detailed about bids, and a section that's just as detailed about when we do requests for proposals, and they call competitive negotiations is another name for it. And you may see the language is interchangeable in there, because the state calls it competitive negotiations. But there's a whole section in there that tell us what to do, how to go about doing it. And I think so we have any questions, there's enough information so that we know we can get the process going. And if you have any questions, we have access to the HUD handbook or the state code or the HUD regs and the references, so that we can answer our questions. So, and there is a section, because sometimes we do use non-federal funds, particularly if you're doing some other development that's not HUD funded. And so this covers that a little, it covers that, because you don't necessarily have to follow. If you have an alternate procurement policy, you can use that. However, you're gonna have to make sure you state that as part of your procurement policy. For us, we use the same policy for our non-federal procurement, because you got to base an alternate procurement policy on something. We are looking into, because we have so many tax credit properties that are a mixture of either tax credit project based looking at that to see if we don't have to be as stringent as the HUD regs, but we looked into following the state regs, but in some ways they're more stringent, in other ways they're less. So we're sticking right now. For now, we're sticking with what we know. Design, build, and construction management. Those are some things that the state allows. And anywhere where HUD is silent on an item, we have to go to the state or local code to see if they speak on it. I don't know if you all have any energy performance contracts, but there is a section that deals with that. Legal services, HUD has a whole section in its handbook on the procurement of legal services. So we made a point of showing that. And then there are some ways you can do non-competitive procurement, and we actually state why and how. HUD frowns on those, but you're gonna have to, as long as you document, you can do it, and we covered the areas in which you can do that. And if there is any non-competitive procurement, like a sole source over $100,000, you have to get HUD approval, and they give you a whole set of items you got to prove before they approve it. Like I said before, we went into some detail on the independent cost estimate, price analysis, and cost analysis to help the staff with that. And we talk about how we can cancel our solicitations, cooperative procurement. That is something that we're doing a lot of in public procurement now, due to a lot of public entities working with smaller staffs, and but the workload has not diminished. So a lot of us are using cooperative procurement. This talks about how to follow this cooperative procurement. And there are a couple of forms that I use that I'm gonna suggest that we implement here that document the use of cooperative procurement and why it's in our best interest. And so, and then the HUD has some separate regs on using cooperative procurement. And we can, GSA contracts, which are the federal contracts, they do allow us to use Schedule 70 for information technology. And that covers a lot of items. So it is something that we can use. And this talks about what we should have in our files. And then it talks about when there's conflicts between federal and state requirements. And there are several areas where there is a conflict between the HUD regs and the state regs. And sometimes, although HUD says you have to determine what's the most stringent, so it depends on who you're talking to, because you talk to HUD, they're like, you need to follow what we say. We talk about contractor qualifications and their duties, because suspension and debarment is huge with HUD. When they come do audits, they want to make sure you have the documentation that you check. They have a website that we can check now. They want to make sure we do that. These are some other ways of doing it when you have a qualified business list or pre-qualified contractors. The state allows us to do that if you're doing a construction solicitation. So that's something that comes from the state code versus HUD. Next, we cover different contract types. We always talk about the option years for housing authorities. HUD allows us to have a 5-year contract max. So you can do like 1 year with 4 option years. It always has to be at the housing authority's sole discretion. So The contractors can't say, I got a 5-year contract. All our contract documents have to say that, our solicitations say that. And the whole idea is you want to make sure it's more advantageous to the housing authority to maintain this contract. There are certain clauses that we have to put in all our contracts. This covers that, and we make sure we it's in this policy to make sure our staff, we can follow that. And then we covers a little bit about contract administration. That's sort of a whole nother area. Once the contract has been let, then contract administration comes into a play. And so the procurement policy hits it slightly, but it doesn't go into a lot of details about that. We talk about our specification. People always ask, can we do, why we can't do a local preference? Well, HUD doesn't allow us to do that. And that is, that's one thing, and that's covered in this policy. This goes back to several years ago when there were ARA funds and the whole Buy American. I don't know if you all still have ARA funds now, but it is covered in the policy in case it's there. And then this session deals with appeals and remedies, so that if someone tells us what to do as a housing authority, if we have any protests or disputes in our contracts, and that gives them, and it also lets our vendors know what it is they can do if there's any type of dispute in our contract. This session covers small and other businesses. So it also covers the small women and minority businesses. It talks about different entities that we will use to help us make sure we, to the greatest extent feasible, can contract with those type of businesses. Section 3 is HUD's big thing, and we make sure we follow our Section 3 policy that you have at the Housing Authority. And we talk about the different definitions, several definitions here so people will know. And then you have to have your ethics section. That is a requirement. So, because the conflict of interest is huge. With procurement, is all about the appearance of a conflict, whether or not there is a conflict. So we talk about that. We want to make sure everyone is aware of what our conflict of interest clause says. And that is, and then there's some, and it not only covers the employees, but it also covers commissioners if they have any conflicts where a procurement action is concerned, or entity. This covers employees, gifts. Sometimes vendors have a tendency to want to provide gifts. Like I said, it goes back to this appearance of conflict. If people leave CRHA to work for a vendor, it talks about that. Code kickbacks, and this thing with purchase of building materials from A&E firms, that's a HUD reg. You can't do that. A little bit about confidentiality and contingent fees. The last session is the disposition of surplus property, and there should be a surplus survey and disposition policy. So, and it actually refers back to that. And HUD approval, that's the last session. HUD generally does not approve procurement actions unless there's a violation of any of their regulations or their rules. we actually say we certify. There is an exemption for pre-reward review where HUD has to certify and review your whole your procurement policy separately before you adopt. And this is, if you certify, it's a self-certification that it is in abidance with the HUD rules and a handbook. Then you don't have to, but you do send your procurement policy as part of your agency plan. So when HUD approves your agency plan, then they will approve any of your policy documents. And you're doing mixed finance development now, from what I understand. And so we had a session because we've been doing mixed finance development. HUD does let you do, they have a whole set of rules for procurement for mixed finance housing when the housing authority is the owner entity. So I left that in here so that we will have some guidance of what to do with our mixed finance properties. And like I was talking before, you can use an alternate procurement plan. HUD has to approve it, but it has to be based on some standards. Some housing authorities across the country are actually going with the federal acquisition regulations, the FAR standards, because they're no longer public housing authorities. They've converted all their public housing to like RAD or mixed finance. So they're moving away from the HUD regs, but you have to base it on something. So we made a point of adding the language in here. Our attorney did this about tax credit projects because the timing is central to those programs, and we made a point of highlighting that we were using at that time. When the state approved pre-qualified bidders, we used that as a selection process for our tax credit properties because we wanted to make sure we had someone that was able to do the job. Because if you don't finish a job and complete it in the time due, there's some serious financial ramifications there. And this talks about our pre-qualification process. And then the last session is just a bunch of definitions that we cover in the policy. So I know that's a mouthful and that's a lot of information, but are there any questions?
Hi, I'm Commissioner Talbert. How are you? First, I want to say thank you for giving us that wonderful illustration and going through everything. Sounds like staff might need a diagram. It sounds like a diagram written out in words. But I had two questions. My first question was, you said that the ED would be responsible for making all the decisions, but you said you talked a lot about language and appearance. So I'm wondering, because we have an interim ED, should we do a memo of understanding or should we do a resolution? Seeing as that she's not the ED, but she's the interim ED, would language, as far as that's concerned, affect us in any way with the decision making of the ED?
No, because it is the fact that you designated an interim ED, they have, by virtue of that role, the powers of an ED. Because we had an interim ED for a minute because it took us a couple of years to get a formal full-time ED, and when the board voted to hire the ED, because y'all should have something there. There's probably something in your minutes about an interim ED being appointed or voted on. So that should cover all of that.
I just became a little concerned because you talked a lot about language and you talked a lot about appearance. So I was just wondering how those two would be interchangeable. And my second question would be, I guess for Dave, with the updates and the redevelopment moving forward, how far have we gotten with updating the information for the update for redevelopment?
Are you talking about specifically in terms of the procurement policy or?
Yes.
Yeah, so actually Kathleen and I were just talking a couple days ago about making sure that when we transition to low-income housing tax credit funded projects, that we want to make sure all of the rules and regulations are in place and that our staff are fully trained in all the rules and regulations, not just for procurement, but also in property management, finance. There's a whole lot that goes into mixed finance, housing management. And so it's definitely on our radar screen. Thankfully, we've got over a year to prepare, but we don't want to put it off. We need to get started now. So we agree.
Thanks. My last question is, when we got down to the confidentiality piece, there was not enough description for confidentiality. Why was that?
You mean for the employee or the commissioners, or which
I think it was,
ones you want
I
more
think
language?
it was at the bottom. It was, I think section 8 point something. I couldn't catch it.
Hold
'cause
on, I'll pull it back up.
Yeah, you kind of breezed through it a little bit. I couldn't catch it. 8 or 9, was it?
That was part of the we talked about conflict of interest and all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's towards the end.
So this was talk about use of confidential information. Then there's the solicitation contract and disclosure.
It was towards the end, right before you got to the definitions.
For the so that was, the definitions are the very last section.
Right, so I think it was either the page before that or.
So that was right up, that was, this is, okay. This is, we're talking about the mixed finance process here in 13.
Yeah, 13. Okay. And is that talking about confidentiality for the procurement or confidentiality for the person that we procure? It wasn't clear.
No, everything here talks about what we would do as an agency for procurement.
Okay.
Meaning when we're doing a procurement action, let's say for any type of a bid, an invitation for a bid, a request for proposal, that we don't share that information with anyone, and that you can't talk to a contractor, even if you're familiar with them. You know, they may be a friend of yours, but you can't let them know, oh, we got this bid coming out next week on such and such and such, because you can't give them any information that will have the appearance that this person got some inside knowledge or have a leg up on the other potential bidders or offerers.
Right, but
So
that's my question would be, why is that not spelled out? It's just saying confidentiality for the person that has to know what that means, that's using that piece of information. Is not spelled out so that we would know that that's exactly what it means. I guess.
Well, there is in the actual section where you're talking about your invitation for bids and your request for proposals, it talks about the process and procedures here. So it does say that no information should be public. You can't know, like for our RFP, no public information can be given until after contract award. So it is in those different sessions that process is listed.
Right. Well, I guess just for me, I guess I'm just saying, like how you explained to us that you can't have conversation and things like that. I would get from that okay, we can't discuss that, but it would totally go over my head that I can't discuss it with a friend, or it's just a general conversation. So I guess for me, I would want, if I was reading this more, I would want more, I guess, definition of what that means. So, but that's just me. I was curious why that section was so small. That's all.
Some helpful feedback we could think about when we do the class next week. Looks like you got frozen, Dolores.
Yeah.
If we approve this, I guess to your point, if there's during the training, if there's improvements or tweaks or clarification that needs to be put in the document, should we wait to approve it, or approve it and then some small edits can be made?
My preference would be if it's small edits like that we do, we're aware of it after the fact, but if the document itself is whole, that we do it. It's essentially important for this agency to have this in place.
Okay.
I've been really grateful to have Dolores' assistance. We've been working really hard to, she helped us work on getting a contractor, to procure a contractor to help with doing our vacant turns, which we're about to start doing, as well as she's working on reprocuring our safety, our integrated pest management, and our dumpsters. And it's really important that we have this policy in place as well while we're doing all that.
So I'm not at all saying that it doesn't need to be in place, but what I am saying is that implementation for those who might not correctly understand what it's saying, because some of the descriptive vocabulary that she used for me is not written in there, but even though it refers back to code, it doesn't specifically say that we shouldn't be in conversation with other people, and that, the confidentiality of it, we can talk about it afterwards, but it doesn't say that. So I'm just saying, for our sake, we might need to be a little more descriptive. Not that it shouldn't be in place, but just, I don't know how y'all want to tweak it, or even if y'all want to tweak it. But for me, if I was reading it, that would go over my head because it's not there.
Dolores and I had talked about adding some attachments, and this might be a good place to consider having one with referral to that section. What do you think, Dolores? We still have
May have lost.
If we lost Dolores. Davis, Dolores still on?
She is not, no. She lost her.
Great. There were several sections we had talked about having some attachments, and I think this would be a really good one. We're doing some ethics training actually right now with staff, and I think this is a good place to connect with it. I'll make note of that.
So Kathleen, could you put something in there that just says, like, at the confidentiality piece, that attachment refer to other attachments that's already a part of? That way you can have something there that you can just refer to if you needed to go to understand. Because I clearly understand what Ms. Talbot is saying. If you're somebody who don't understand the process, then that could be an issue. And that's a concern, because that's something that people really need to understand. So just to put something there to say, see attachment, or, follow up with something where you can understand it much clearer, I think would be, it doesn't have to be a whole thing, but something that they can refer to.
Mr. Eberg, would it be all right if we look at approving the policy as it is, if the board is in agreement, and then bringing back to the board the attachments to review after the fact?
The board can do it. A cleaner way to do it would be to postpone, but I think you need the policy in place. So, ideally it would be done all in one piece, but you can do it separately.
I think if we need the policy in place, that we need to go ahead and approve it. But, you might, like you said, find other areas that you also need to do that with. So I would say bring it back to the board with whatever y'all come up with. But if that's what we need to do is to put it in place now, because I mean, we have stuff that we have to get done that we can't keep setting on. So for me, if that's what we need to do, we go ahead and approve it. But you know, if there's not a big deal with, you know, adding to or taking from, you know, the policy, then I don't have a problem with going ahead and approving it.
What you could choose to do is to adopt it the way it is now.
Yeah.
With an understanding that you're going to come back in 2 months and review it to see if anything needs to be tweaked.
Right.
I think that's a great suggestion.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I had technical difficulties. I'm back. This is Dolores.
Yeah. You've gone to San Francisco. Um,
I know. I had to,
So-
I picked it up on my tablet.
It's good.
Dolores, we were just discussing that of asking the board to approve the policy as it is, but working over the next month or two on some more attachments to go with it, and then bring that back to the board. Just to,
okay.
get some more information on confidentiality and ethics and any other areas that maybe would come across as we're training staff.
Oh, because we may find questions once we go through a training.
Mhm.
See some areas that they want more clarification on.
Exactly.
Okay, that sounds good. Are there other questions, or we can move on to approve the new policy? Okay. Could we get, I guess at this point, we could get a motion to approve resolution 1413. And we can say, you know, with amendments to be added or attachments to be added as needed. So should I read? I can't, I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember. Sorry, I read the resolution first and then we do motion.
That works.
Okay, so I'll just go ahead and read the resolution and then we'll do a motion. This is Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority Resolution 1413, whereas the Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority, hereinafter CRHA, adopted the existing purchasing policy, and whereas in the intervening period of time, changes in procurement law have occurred such that CRHA must change their policy to comply with increases in minimum dollar thresholds for purchasing actions, as well as other procurement criteria. And whereas in order to bring CRHA's purchasing policy current with existing laws, it is appropriate to amend and adopt a new procurement policy in keeping with the language set forth in Exhibit A attached. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of the Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority that the board hereby adopts the attached procurement policy referenced herein as Exhibit B, dated May 21st, 2002, and that such policies shall supersede and replace the policy previously adopted under Resolution 1392. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners of CRHA hereby approve the adoption of the procurement policy effective May 21st, 2020, and are authorizing the interim executive director to implement the plan. Is there a motion?
I move that we adopt the resolution 1413 with attachments to be added later.
I second.
Great. Let me get the roll call. My roll call vote list. Okay. So this is to approve the new procurement policy. Ms. Oliver? You may be muted. We'll come back. Ms. Talbert?
Yes.
Mr. Oakley?
Aye.
Ms. Goldblatt?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Ms. Oliver? You may be muted. Oh, Miss Oliver. And I don't think Miss Slaughter's joined us. Please shout out if you have.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So the resolution passes today. Wonderful. Okay, so next we have, and thank you, Dolores, for helping us with all of that. That was really, we needed that extra boost of your information, your expertise.
You're welcome. It was nice meeting you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So next we have the COVID-19 update. And Kathleen, do you want to talk about this?
Yes, things are opening up, but we're continuing to be really cautious. Things are kind of changing every day, so we're trying to be very mindful of that. We've now gotten masks and gloves out to all sites, and we've also been getting them out to voucher holders. And we're looking at getting another round available soon. We've had tremendous assistance with this from the Emergency Operations Center, which with Sue Moffitt and also staff at the Department of Social Services have been in contact with their housing office at least once a week or at least every other week. And it's just been a really great partnership to have at this time. I'm going to be, one of the things, I'll be talking a little bit about funds soon, but one of the things we've done after hearing concerns from residents is we've increased security, and we're really fortunate to have some CARES money to help with that. But we're hearing a lot of security concerns, especially at West Haven and South First Street. So we increased on the 8th of this month service at 6th Street, West Haven, South First Street. We have here what the cost was. We'll be having more talks with the budget in coming months, as well as how we're adjusting things with some of our extra grant funds and the CARES money that we're getting. But we've also, Ms. Green was really firm with Millennium that it would change everything if we could have foot patrol, and that changed on the 8th. And I've been hearing a lot of positive feedback, and I'm hoping Ms. Oliver would share some of her thoughts as well. So far, it seems to be going, are being pretty effective. And I think having people on the ground has made a big difference.
So yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, what I've been seeing is they've been coming on the property. They're staying for at least an hour each time they show up. They are walking. They're also interacting with the residents and the kids. But I've seen a lot less of the hanging around around the community center area. I just think they look more professional, and they're acting more professional when they're on the property right now. But I just think it's just having the presence of them there. I feel like people are respecting the property a lot more, just having them there.
All right, thank you.
That's good to hear, especially I'm thinking, you know, as we get into summer, although, oh, sorry, something's going on. Whoa. Let me see if I need to do. Anyway, I was going to just say that's great before summer is officially started, even though school is kind of out already, but knowing that there's usually an uptick in need for security during the summer months anyway. So it's great that this is already in place.
Have they had any concerns or made any reports to us about anything that's been happening recurring on the property that maybe we need to address as landlords?
I don't know if, I don't think Ms. Green's on the call tonight, but we had some challenges about 2 weeks ago, and we had some great conversations with Bar in the police department and about different approaches. At the time, the police came out, but we also felt that maybe that wasn't always the best way to address it, and that's when we made these changes with Millennium. And I've been trying to ask around to get feedback on that to see if people felt that was a better approach.
Have you gotten any feedback on that?
I have from a few people. I've been asking around. I was lucky enough to talk to Ms. today, and I don't think she's on the call either, Miss Johnson. And I've been driving around some too on weekends just to see the change. I think it's really hard because there's not a lot to do right now because people are at home, but we also want everyone to be safe.
I was just curious because, you know, we do always have those few, but I was just wondering, I know before we had a lot of issue at Crescent Halls. So I was just wondering then versus now, have it kind of dwindled down a little bit, or, you know, what their concerns may have been?
I think the biggest concern is individuals who don't live on the property coming to the property.
Okay, do you want to move on?
Sure.
I'm looking to developments, meaning financial development.
We can kind of, we're really lucky to get the grant from CACF to provide rental assistance for public housing residents for May and June. And any residents who had already paid May, that went towards their July rent. And we've been really excited about that program. I was hoping Dave could do an announcement for a grant we just found out about today.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up under redevelopment, but I can bring it up now.
Oh, that's okay.
No, that's all right. We're very grateful. We have received a grant for just under $50,000 from Virginia Housing Development Authority to support redevelopment related operating expenses in the light of the COVID-19 crisis. So those will help to cover some of the staffing and operations costs related to our redevelopment work and our Section 3 work. So we're very happy about that. And again, thankful to VHGA for their support.
I'm sorry, Dave, can you repeat those?
Yeah, so it's a grant just under $50,000. It's like $49,900 and some odd dollars from VHGA, Virginia Housing Development Authority. And that goes to support redevelopment and Section 3 related operating expenses. So staffing and program costs related to redevelopment in Section 3. So it's it was specific. It was a separate pot of funds that VHGA made available to housing authorities and housing nonprofits around the state in light of the COVID-19 crisis. And we're very grateful to have received that award today.
Thank you. All right, sounds good.
We also did receive payroll protection plan funding, and we're working right now on, we're going to have a meeting next week on that with Haley Fetro, just to go over exactly what that means. And we're going to be coming to the board too with some more information. We want to be really careful with, as we get all these different funds, that we make sure we manage them appropriately. And talking about that, I had sent out a flyer. Basically, guidance from HUD has been changing on a pretty regular basis. So we're trying to really pay attention so we know if something does change. We had a notice that came out that was giving us dates in April for this CARES funding to start. And then we just got an email this week telling us it actually went back to March. So it's a time to be really mindful of any emails that come from HUD. We're looking at them closely. And part of that is why we're going to be meeting on a regular basis to be looking at all the different financial requirements with these different streams of funding. It's really exciting to be getting these funds, but these funds are in place for us to use through the end of the calendar year. And we don't know if we're going to be getting more. And though it sounds like a lot of money at first, it's really not. We've already started spending some of it for security. Some of these things are in place for different reasons. Preparing, which we've been doing, preventing, a lot of the work we're doing with that, but also responding. We're really hoping that's not going to be an area we have to focus on. But if we did have, a large outbreak at one of our sites, this would be the funding we would look at to provide more supports. We have some funding as well here for the Housing Choice Voucher Program. We've been using some of that to get educational material out. We've also been trying to think about the summer and all the kids that are going to be home. And Dave had a really great idea. Did you want to talk about it, Dave?
Well, this particular pot of money includes funding for potential collaborations with local schools to help with academic support for students who live in public housing. And so one of the ideas that we've been kicking around is working with our schools to basically compile, if there's a basket of educational support materials, books, crafts, art supplies, you name it, that we can distribute to every child who lives in public housing, so that this summer there are some, academically engaged types of activities for kids, since a lot of the summer programs are not going to be in operation this summer. So I think we're going to try to reach out to the city schools here in the next couple of days to start that discussion and see if that idea bears fruit. So.
Dave, if this does happen to move forward, is it any way possible we can include the voucher holders as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. As Kathleen said, there is additional monies in this particular pot for the voucher program. And so I think between the monies here for public housing and for vouchers, and then maybe some other monies we have access to, we can certainly do something for kids in voucher households as well. It may not be exactly the same, but we don't want to leave those kids behind either. So
right, exactly, and that's why I was asking. Even if it's not the same, the generosity would probably be welcome to the households.
Absolutely.
The vouchers are distributed by the housing authority, so I would hate to see them get left out.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Sorry, I got dropped for a minute there. Yeah, I think we're probably going to be, anyone who's interested in helping with this, I think Dave and I are going to try to get some people together soon. So if you wanted to reach out to either Dave or I and let us know.
I did want to mention I was shared on a proposal. I don't know that it's been fully approved, but UVA through the Office of Community Outreach is actually trying to set up something with UVA faculty and grad students to work with area kids over the summer to try to keep them from falling behind. So I can, as I find out more about that, I can pass that along since this sounds exactly like the kind of thing they want to be doing.
Also, can we extend it out to FAR and see if they want to jump in and help or not, whether or not they want to be a part of it?
Definitely. We try to do everything we can with FAR. And then continuing on, Laura was really helpful to us. We had a very last minute option to apply some funding, which was a little outside of the box for us, but just essentially important. We realized that nobody was applying for CDBG CV money for private renters who are really at risk right now. And we got an application in early this week for that. And we're waiting to hear about that. And we would have that managed in our rental office, sort of alongside with our CSRAP program. But we'll see what happens and we'll update you. Trying to think. Also, we have an application in, as I said, with FEMA. I'm just being really careful with that. FEMA funds are for last resort, and we just want to be mindful of what we need and what we have. And once we sit down and have budgets figured out a little bit more for the funds we have, we'll probably talk a little bit more about the application we had in for FEMA.
Does the regulation state for FEMA that once we get money, we won't be able to get any more, or how does that go?
Well, it's just really clear that we have to have expended the CARES money. We have to be really careful with all these funds not to duplicate in any way. And I think we'll have a better sense once we sit down in the next week or two as we look at the budgets for what we're going to be using these funds for and the gaps we have, what's left, so that our application won't be asking for things we've already received funding for and used. I just want to be really, really mindful of that.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to everyone. I'm really excited that there's offers of help and that we've been able to get, of those funds in. It's great. So moving on our agenda, unless there's any last questions for Kathleen on the grants and developments. If Jeff Meyer is still with us, we have two, sorry, I have them printed out, two letters that reaffirm that the Housing Authority will be working with, creating a new LLC and pretty much I don't know how to say it, leasing our land. He can explain more, but leasing our land. So for our mixed finance housing development application, these are decisions made the past through the redevelopment committee and through the board. But while he is working to finish the applications to get construction moving as soon as possible, as we can this summer, late this summer probably, we need to reaffirm that, yes, we will be using our land as part of these projects. So Mr. Meyer, would you like to explain that in a better way?
No, you did fine, Betsy. Thank you. And thanks for warning me in on this meeting. Appreciate it. So yeah, what I'm asking is for the Housing Authority to reaffirm its intent to contribute the land and buildings in the case of Crescent Halls and the land in the case of South First Phase 1 to the redevelopment effort. Basically, the form that it will take, since you are not selling the land to the new LLCs, you're actually leasing it over a long period of time. It's going to be 99-year lease. So you are basically lending the LLCs the value of those leasehold interests, and the value of the leasehold interest is determined by an appraisal, and we've had appraisals done of both the land and the land and buildings at Crescent Halls, and there will be a promissory note from the LLCs to the Housing Authority that will be recorded as a deed of trust that will document the contribution of the Housing Authority to the redevelopment effort through the LLCs. So these letters basically document that in a form that will allow us to go forward with the mixed finance applications to HUD. They'll be followed up with the actual legal documents, the promissory note and the deed of trust, probably this summer as we get closer to closing.
So it's
Betsy,
not, go ahead, Austin.
Betsy, I think this is Dave Oberg. I just want
Yes.
to think what you need is a direction from the board to the executive director to sign the letters.
Okay, thank you.
That's what's missing at this point.
So
The direction, sorry, go ahead, Ms. Talbert.
So we are not becoming an LLC. This is for the LLCs. I just want clarity right there because I'm kind of confused with that.
Sure.
Can I weigh in here real quick? Because I understand, I think I understand exactly where she's coming from. And I want everybody to understand, this is, in essence, we're lending it to ourselves because LLC is controlled, the managing partner or a member of that LLC is the Charlottesville Community Development Corporation, which is completely owned and controlled by CRHA. So in a way, this is just sort of, I mean, it's a standard thing, but we have to sort of put it in writing that we are putting these assets into the projects, but ultimately all comes back to us. So,
all right. I just needed some clarity. That's all. Thank you.
Good question.
Mm-hmm. So anyone else? And also I forgot, Ms. Talbert, I don't know if you've met Jeff Meyer. I know some of us who have been on the redevelopment committee are familiar with him, but in case other people hadn't, I realized there's some people who haven't met you. But he's been working really hard on all of the paperwork, finances, things that are above my head. No, I'm just kidding. But you know, all the kind of like little nit details that go into all of this.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Dave. Thanks for giving me that clarity that I was looking for.
Sure.
Okay, so in term to get a direction from the board, I guess I could do just a roll call vote again and say, you know, are we in favor of our interim executive director signing off on these letters? Does that sound okay?
Betsy, I think you should entertain a motion from one of your board members.
Okay.
One of the commissioners saying I move that we direct the executive director to execute the documents on our behalf.
Okay.
Okay, I move that we authorize the executive director to sign the documents on our behalf.
I second.
Great. And then I'll go through the roll call again. So all those in favor, Ms. Gilbert?
Aye.
Mr. Osteen?
Yes.
Ms. Goldblatt?
Yes, aye.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
And myself, aye. So yes, the direction of the board is to please sign the letters and move forward.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And thank you, Jeff, for joining us this evening. And now, next we have our redevelopment update from Mr. Norris. So,
Yeah, I'm just going to give a quick report
Yeah.
since I just gave a report last week, but just to update everybody. Actually, tomorrow we're having hopefully our last meeting to finalize the terms of our letter of intent with Cornelius Griggs and EMA Construction to get sort of moving on getting them on contract. They've been doing pre-development work on the renovation of Crescent Hall. So this would get them get moving on actually getting them on contract to do the project itself. So we're very close to I think a very mutually agreeable arrangement there. So that'll be happening tomorrow. And so that'll be the basically representatives from all the parties to our MOU, our memorandum of understanding for the redevelopment effort. So that's FAR, Housing Authority, CCDC, and the Affordable Housing Group / Riverbend, and then Legal Aid is also part of those conversations. We, as Ms. Rutger mentioned, Jeff Meyer has been working hard on getting all the approvals from HUD now that are necessary to get us to closing on the first phase of South First Street. And just within the last week, we've submitted basically the final set of documents to HUD. There might be a couple of little things, but the main package of documents, thanks to Jeff and his hard work, went in this past week. So very excited about that. And our current goal is to get moving on the construction there at South First Street on the ball field, hopefully by August, maybe September, but certainly this summer. Phase 2 of South First Street, which again will replace the existing 58 units and replace them with 113 new units. That's the one where we've had a whole lot of resident planning and design work. We are still working on a strategy for securing low-income housing tax credits for that project. In fact, Jeff and Kathleen and I just had a little strategy session today about that. And we're guardedly optimistic that those funds will come through in addition to other funds that'll be needed to get moving on that project. We mentioned the VHDA grant we received today for our redevelopment operations. Very excited about that. Unfortunately, Miss Johnson couldn't be here tonight, Joy Johnson, but I know she's plugging away every day and supporting the residents who are enrolled in our Section 3 program, the first class of residents who are participating in the job skills training component, and also getting residents hired for work with the Housing Authority itself. So she's working hard and we commend her efforts. Next Thursday, the 28th, is our biweekly redevelopment committee meeting. Again, it's 2:30 p.m. Those are open to the public. We'll post the Zoom link for those. And then the following Thursday is our biweekly project team meeting for our phase 1 projects. Those are also open to the public. That one's going to be a big one because that'll be June 4th at 2:30 p.m. And again, we'll see that Zoom link as well. Cornelius Griggs will be joining us for that one and presenting sort of a revised proposal for the renovation work at Crescent Falls, taking into account the construction environment in a COVID-19 environment. So he's got some ideas he wants to share with us and we're looking forward to hearing them. So happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. All right, thank you.
okay. Thank you. And we can move into public comments. And if there's still questions about redevelopment, that's great, or other matters from the public.
Hey, it's Brandon from FAR. Not a ton to offer. great meeting. Actually, I learned a lot, and I'm really looking forward to looking at the spreadsheet that Miss Glenn Matthews has about the various funding streams. Would love to discuss more about the FEMA funds and process, and just encourage y'all to also work with other housing providers and attend the HAC meeting on Tuesday, as they try to sort of look at these different pots of money and the different needs that need to be handled. And I know you all have a stake in that and are also willing to make sure that you don't grab the wrong pot of money that could be better used by another agency. So just going to encourage that. And then I meant to say earlier, I noticed tonight now you're on channel 10. That's pretty cool that we can get back more into more transparency for the broader public. And just hoping these are also going to be archived on the city website. And I think that's all we got for this evening.
And these meetings are also archived on our own website, which is CRHA.com, just FYI. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
We have not received anything on email, just FYI. So.
Okay. There's obviously a lot more we'd like to talk about and a lot more ideas and things in the works, but we are to keep our agenda tight to emergency and operating issues while we're meeting virtually. So I have we added a closed session if the board wanted to talk in more detail about the executive director search. If that's the case, we can go forward with that. And that would be our last item on the agenda. So any board members like to weigh in on that?
I just have a procedural question.
Yes.
I should have clarified this yesterday when you emailed to ask about closed session. How does closed session work? I mean, like, do we ask everyone to get off and stop recording? Do we need a separate link like that? And
That's
also,
a very good question.
I gotta be honest, I'm not the only person in my home right now. And I don't exactly, I'm not sure, like, do I tell people to put on headphones and play loud music? Like, I'm procedurally, how does that work?
Heck if I know. Mr. Oberg, do you have thoughts on this? Honestly, the only thing we were discussing were the actual names of the candidates.
The cleanest way to do it, if you,
publicly.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
The cleanest way to do it, if the commissioners want to have a closed meeting regarding this, is to have a separate Zoom meeting.
Okay.
To keep this one open, because closed session, you then have to come back onto the record to affirm that you maintained the FOIA rules. So this would stay open. We'd go into a separate Zoom and then you'd come back. And if you have a closed session where people are in your home, you simply need to put yourself in a place where they can't hear it.
Okay, so commissioners, would you like to do that at this time, or the other option is we could schedule a closed session after the 4 interviews happen and get an update at that point as well, next maybe the end of next week?
I'm comfortable with the end of next week.
I'm comfortable with the end of next week.
I'm happy with whatever people want. I can send out the Zoom link. So all of our interviews have been scheduled. I was going to update the search committee after that. And I'll send the Zoom link. Sorry, and I feel like I have a lot of echo. but I can send out the Zoom link for those interviews to all of the board members if you want to join us, but we'll record them and I'll send out the cloud recorded link so you all can watch any of them if you want them for further. I mean, it's not going to be very scintillating viewing, but in the event that you wanted to get a really thorough sense, I'll send those out to you.
Okay. That sounds good. So for now, it sounds like we don't need to do the closed session. There's ways for us to plug in next week, and we can schedule one after the 4 interviews if we'd like to delve into that further. Okay.
Sounds good.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then I think we can adjourn our meeting. Our next monthly meeting would be scheduled, sorry to get my clunky physical calendar, would be scheduled on June 22nd. That's our next usual monthly meeting. It's usually on the 4th Monday of the month. So we will aim to do one then. And if there are any additional meetings, we will send out information in the meantime. Okay, do I have a motion for to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
I second.
Great. Okay, Miss Oliver. Wait, where did you go? Oh, there you are. Miss Oliver, you might be on mute. Miss-
Again,
Oh,
Yeah,
again?
we hear you.
we got you.
Oh, okay.
Miss Goldblatt,
Yes.
Mr. Osteen,
Yes.
Miss Talbert,
Yes.
and myself. Yes. Okay, great. The meeting is adjourned, 7:41. Thank you so much for everyone and your hard work and for showing up and trying to, I saw you, Michelle, and being with us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye,
Bye.
Night,
everyone.
everybody.
Welcome. Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
So-